Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Leading Rural Healthcare. Bill Hellebusch didn't set out to run a hospital. He started his career as a physical therapist, working with patients hands on before finding his way into hospital operations and eventually taking the top job at Hermann Area District Hospital in 2023. And he grew up just up the road in Jonesburg, so leading Hermann's hospital, I'm sure, is a little like coming home. It's a fiercely independent hospital and proudly the first district hospital in the state that has learned to lean on partners like MU Healthcare and Mercy without losing itself. And like every critical access hospital, it runs on thin margins and no small amount of grit. Here's the thing that tells you the most about Bill, though, and I'm excited to have this conversation later in the session. When he stepped away from the job last year, his staff and his community pushed to bring him back, and back he came. So not many leaders can say their town refused to let them go. So with that, welcome to Leading Rural Healthcare, Bill. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Me too, Brendan. Thanks for having me on it. I think it's really cool that you all are doing this. I'm excited to be a part of the Leading Rural Healthcare podcast. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, we're excited to have you. Let's start where everyone wants to start that knows Hermann. A lot of people in Missouri know Hermann for one thing, and that's wine, right? So educate our listeners on what else makes Hermann great and about your hospital, if you can.
Yeah. So Herman's it's a really cool place, and as are all the river towns around Herman. I'm a little bit of a local history buff, and when you look at this area, it's really neat in that it looks like Germany. So where we reside here, it's actually known as the Missouri Rhine Valley, and that's because our ancestors that settled this place from Germany, they landed here because it looked like the Rhine River Valley from Germany with the green rolling hills and the big Missouri River. They're like, oh, this is home.
Yeah.
And so how that's influenced a lot of these towns is you have a lot of the same last name, like Hellebusch, for instance, Frankenberg and Bruckerhoff and Engemann, and the families get really, really big and no one leaves. And so it's pretty cool, but it has definitely painted our culture. And Hermann has a lot of that. We have a lot of culture, past winemaking. I would say one of the really cool things that's unique to this community is, and you already said it in the opening, you mentioned grit, and this community has a lot of it, and it extends past the hospital. But what I've noticed over the years here is that when people get something in their mind to get something done in this community, it gets done, and it may not be that easy. And it may require that everyone comes together, but they do that here. And by doing that, they've built this great little German town that has everything from authentic sausage making and wine making and bed and breakfast and just the beautiful German architecture that you see here, but also a thriving school, both public and private churches and a hospital. So it's just a really great little community.
Yeah. You think that grit and hardworking mentality is really what has allowed a lot of these things to thrive in the town? I asked this full well, having experienced my wife's from a very, I would say, a very similar town in terms of German heritage, Jasper, Indiana. Not a wine town, but you can just tell the hardworking, that work ethic has allowed that town, which is similar and to Hermann, where it's not close to any metro area, but seemingly thrives and is one of the best places to live in the state, as I'm sure just given the stickiness of the community and the families there, is a testament to Hermann as well.
Oh, without question. And if you look at the last 10 to 20 years, their success and what they've been able to do, it really flies in the face of market trends and what we see going on around us. A lot of small towns they have kind of shuttered up, for lack of a better term. That's really sad. That hasn't happened in Hermann, but it's not to say that it hasn't had its struggles. In the last 10 to 20 years, you have seen an erosion of the population here, the census in and around Hermann. But again, back to that grit and let's roll up our sleeves and get this done. They continue to make it work. And now I think that pendulum has swung, I think, about as far to that side as it's going to in terms of population decrease, and I think there's some exciting things on the horizon for the area here that we stuck it out this long. I can't see that changing now for the future.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to Herman, I'm sure. I want to shift the focus back to you. I mean, you started your career as a physical therapist, not an administrator. So how'd you get from the treatment table to running a hospital?
Oh, that's a great question. And, I'm still very involved in some of our local schools, including Borgia, where I went to high school. And they have me come and give career talks. I always tell them, like, hey, I'm like the last person you want to do that, because my path is anything but linear. There's a lot of like weird stops along the way. I changed my major like 3 or 4 times, also, by the way. But I got out and I started practicing physical therapy, and my physical therapy career was it was pretty short. It was a few years long, and I've always been a fiercely competitive person, just had a fire in the belly and always wanted to do more. And I actually was kind of tapped on the shoulder for my first leadership role. And I say I cut my teeth in patient relations. That was my first leadership role. I wasn't really looking for it. Again, just kind of tapped on the shoulder by a couple of people like, hey, we think you need to consider this. And I was really ambivalent about it because I loved my practice. I loved doing physical therapy in my patients. And I actually rescinded my name from the application. And then I couldn't sleep. And so I called my would-be boss at that point and said, you know what, I think I made a mistake. And I understand if you all don't want to consider me. And said, you know what, it's actually quite the opposite. I appreciate your candor and that you're wrestling with this. And lo and behold, I got the job in patient relations. That was my first leadership job. And then along the way, I hope that everyone is blessed enough to have good mentors in their life, because I've had that. I've had several good mentors. And the most impactful for me was my last boss, who's now retired, Eric Eloff. And he invested so much in me. And all along the way, every turn, he taught me not to have such a fire in the belly. He taught me not to be so competitive. And what I learned under his leadership was that there's really just a bigger purpose that we're serving. And what I found out was I was just showing up to the challenge. I kept getting tapped on the shoulder and said, hey, would you consider this? Would you do this? Hey, Bill, I think we need you to go over here and try this for a little bit. And I just always said yes. If it's what the community needed, I was open to it.
Man, that's fantastic. Just community mindset that's driven where you've ended up. I mean, so you were in patient relations. You said it's not linear, but take me there, right? Into the top spot, where you got hopped around, and maybe give me a little context as to how, I mean, it's all about the patient, right? It's all about the community, how that has led and shown up in your role as CEO. I'm sure it's all the time, right? But
sure. So patient relations, that was eye-opening. Treating patients at the bedside, you get to see everything. You see the best, and you see people at their lowest. In patient relations, I'll tell you that in that job, unfortunately, you didn't always get to hear about people's best day. If I was getting called or if I was getting a letter, it was something went wrong. And so that was a great learning experience for me. And I had the latitude that I got to work really closely with the teams to try to create better patient experiences. So my job, where it first started, is, hey, let's field all the complaints and let's try to provide really good service recovery and get risk at the table when we needed to do that. It actually turned into, towards the end of my time in that role, it actually turned into something much more proactive, where I was working with teams to say, hey, let's work on making sure the patient experience is so good that I don't get called about patient complaints. And I did that for a couple years. And then Eric, I guess he saw more in me, and he started talking to me about more operations. And I was 29 or 30, I think, when Eric made me a director of operations for him at Mercy Hospital in Washington. And one by one, we just started turning on more service lines. So I had pain management. I had patient relations. I kept that. And then I started taking on support services. And like Eric told me, he came up in support services and he said, Bill, support services is going to be a really good learning from you. You're really going to see how a hospital runs. And I didn't really know what he meant by that, but boy, was he right. With support services, that's supply chain, EVS,
Yeah.
food nutrition, public safety facilities. I mean, I was in the underbelly of the hospital all the way up onto the roof. And then after that, Eric started to get me involved in the more clinical aspects of leadership. The hospitalist team at the hospital is one of the teams that I had the pleasure of working with. Continued with pain management. I had respiratory therapy, and just started adding more of these clinical pieces as I still had support services. And I guess I was doing well with those. Eric, he continued mentoring conversations with me, and just he was the one that always told me, because I've never been a leader that has said, hey, in 5 years I want to be a COO, or even at the end of this thing I want to be a CEO. I've never really thought that way. And it was Eric that was actually always pushing me. He said, hey Bill, one day you need to be in my seat. Like, you need to be thinking about this. And he said that because I think what he realized is more than anything that was important to me was the community. That is why I do what I do. And I think that really resonated with Eric. So with that in mind, it was a few years ago, Eric said, hey, Bill, I want you to get to my seat. I think you're going to be good here. But I don't think you're not going to be ready unless you get some blocking and tackling experience. And he said, we're talking about a potential management agreement with Hermann Hospital, where Mercy enters in, and we have a management agreement to run the hospital. He said, and I want you to do that. And I said, okay, just like everything, you asked me to do something and you think I'm the best person for that, I'm going to show up and I'm going to be there. So for the first 2 years, I was here part-time in this chair, as the CEO here at Hermann Hospital. But then I was also, Eric needed me back at Mercy too. So I was still directing operations at Mercy Washington. I did that part of the time too. So you can appreciate, with both those roles, you don't do either part-time. I was physically in each part-time, but I was doing both jobs full-time, which was difficult. But man, I'll tell you what, I kind of akin that to like my residency. It was grueling, but I learned so much in those couple years. I wouldn't take it back.
Yeah, almost like running a small system, but two different goals, two different missions. Well, both in small communities, but yeah, that's incredible. I don't know if you wish for those years back.
I wouldn't take them away, but I'm not in a hurry to relive them.
Right.
Those were long days.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you grew up I alluded to it, but just up the road in Jonesburg, and knew Hermann long before you led its hospital. I mean, what's it mean to you to run? You've kind of, touched on it, but I mean, what's it mean to run the hospital in a community you've known your whole life? I mean, these people that you've known your whole life.
It's awesome. That is really motivating to me. So I grew up in Jonesburg. That's where my dad still lives to this day. I drove to Washington every day with my dad. He worked, so that's a little bit of a hike. He worked in Washington, and I went to school there. So I've been in both communities. And so starting in healthcare at Mercy Washington, that was so important to me because that's a community I knew. That's where I live with my wife and 4 kids today. And that is what drives me. I like being able to round on patients on the floor, just like I can do here at Hermann. If I talk to someone for long enough, I find that we can make a connection. And to me, that makes me feel at home. That's kind of the way I'm wired. If, when I eventually get sick someday and I need hospital care and I'm in a hospital bed, I want to be in a hospital where people know me. That makes me feel comfortable. And so what I get to do, and it is what I get to do, leading this hospital here in Hermann, it's so great because it's supporting a community that I grew up in and I've been in since I was a kid. When I got here full time, which is another part of my story that I think we'll touch on a little bit, but when I made it here full time, that was such a that was a difficult time for me, honestly. But I reflected, and I sent out a message to all the coworkers, providers, leaders, the board here about what it meant. And I had this epiphany. Here I am growing up in Jonesburg. My dad works in Washington. I go to school in Washington. And the route from Jonesburg to Washington, if you take 70 to Warrenton, you shave off about 5 to 7 minutes. And when you do it every day, like 5 to 7 minutes is a big deal. If you go through Hermann, just because it's more winding, but it's also more beautiful, it's longer, but it's much more pretty. Right. And we got to call that the long way home. And my whole life, this is no joke, but when I would get done with football practice, it'd be late, I'd be tired, I'd be sweaty. My dad would wait, he would watch all my practices, and it was 6 o'clock at night. And I would always ask my dad, like, hey, let's take the long way home. He'd say, yeah, let's take the long way home. And coincidentally, there was a lot of Super Tramps Take the Long Way Home track played in that drive. My dad loved his oldies and his old rock. And so my message to the people when I made it here and I was full time is, it took me a while to get here to Hermann, but I see it as I took the long way home. And when I got here and I realized that, it's like, oh man, I am home, and I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
Man, that's so fantastic. That's so fantastic. Well, it's obvious. I mean, again, we're going to get into it, what the community thinks of you, just in what's publicly available to me. But I kind of want to shift, to designation we talk about a lot. Of course, it's critical access hospitals, and you said, critical access hospitals don't have the buffer or the network that bigger prospective payment hospitals enjoy. And we've had the conversation of relevancy of the designation in previous conversations I've had. But I mean, in your opinion, what does the designation do well now as opposed to maybe what it meant years ago? And where does it leave, a hospital like yours, maybe even exposed?
Yeah, sure. So critical access hospital, and I'll preface this by saying that I think there's a difference between a critical access hospital that's independent and one that's not. Mm-hmm. For an independent critical access hospital, I think that you get really good at manipulating levers. You're small enough, the size is such a scale that you really don't have to work under a ton of red tape or bureaucracy. So, I mean, we can pull levers here pretty quick, and we can change on a dime. That allows a critical access hospital to try a lot of different things. We experiment. If we want to try a new service line, we can. The other thing that a critical access hospital can do is you can offer things like swing bed, which is great. It's, a designation that it allows you to take those patients and what we see now is, and a lot of this is driven by payers, is that a lot of your swing bed patients that you get, they're kind of on the line. They just were in an acute stay at another hospital, maybe even ours, but they're no longer eligible for acute inpatient admission. And so a lot of your swing bed patients, they have to be discharged from an inpatient acute stay, but they still have resolving acute issues.
Right.
And so another thing that I think critical access hospitals do really well is they do provide a net and a place for those patients that PPS systems, they don't know what to do with these patients. Well, United is telling us we have to discharge them, but they're maybe a little heavier, a little more involved than we feel that the nursing home down the road can. And that is the place a critical access hospital can shine. Where it leaves us a little short is resources. I mean, we do not have the resources that large PPS hospitals do. There's a pretty thin veil between closure and success, I think. And one of our strengths that I just said, we can turn on a dime, we can pull a lot of levers and try a lot of stuff out. It plays to our strength, yeah, but it can also be a weakness. I always remind our leaders here and our board that, it's great that we don't have to jump through a lot of hoops to make a change, or we don't have a lot of red tape. It also could be our Achilles heel, because if I've learned one thing in my life, it's that I'm pretty good at messing up or being wrong. So that's one of the things. You don't have the safety net or the number of people to kind of bounce ideas off that some of the larger systems do, that have teams in place, for quality metrics, or to do the pro forma to look at the new service line that you're thinking about bringing on. But at the end of the day, if you do make a mistake, again, you're nimble enough, you can back up and reverse track
Yeah.
fairly easily.
Yeah. Well, you talk about being nimble, and you alluded to your board and other leaders, and something we didn't really touch on. We've spoken over the course of doing leading rural healthcare, county-owned hospitals, city chartered hospitals. We've talked about independent hospitals coming up that will be part of a larger system. Of course, you have your partnerships that we'll get into, but tell us a little bit about the governance structure and what that means. You can give pro and cons, right, to the way Hermann is governed today.
Yeah. So I don't even know if any of them will listen or hear this. So I'm not saying this for them, but I have to say I have the best board in the world. I really do. So one of the things that I was used to, being a part of a larger PPS hospital, we had an advisory board, which is great. These were trusted community leaders. We brought to the table. We asked their advice. We told them what we had going on. They would ask us the tough questions like, "Hey, why are you guys doing this?" How that's different here is we have a true board of governance. And under our hospital district, everything we do, it has to be ratified by the board. Now, our board that we have here that I really appreciate, with the exception of Karen Wolking, who is a retired nurse, that's the extent of our health care on the board. And so everyone else, they're quick to realize, like, hey, we've run businesses, we've been involved in education, we've farmed, we've done venting. We don't know hospitals, but we do know the community, and we can help you with those big decisions, and we want to. But then at the end of the day, they always say, let's not confuse ourselves with governance versus management. And so if I bring something up, they're actually the ones that will call me on and say, "Hey, Bill, this sounds like a management decision."
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So in that respect, I really think I have the best of both worlds with our governance structure here.
No, that's fantastic. Well, I mean, I'm sure the governance, that line between management and governance was heightened. I mean, even when you took over in 2023, right? I mean, the hospital, they were in a tough spot financially with debt and a shaky sense of confidence in the community. I mean, what did you actually find when you got the keys?
Yeah. So I did what I think any new CEO would do is I stayed in the office for about 2 weeks. I had a steady line outside my door that and everyone came in, like, "Hey, let's get to know each other." But I spent a good amount of time going through just about every contract and all the books, the finances. And it was pretty grim. I won't lie about that. I actually went back after 2 weeks to my boss at the time, Eric Eloff, and I said, "Eric, like, what are we doing?"
Yeah.
You didn't send me there to close a hospital, did you? And he said, "No, quite the opposite. We need that hospital available in this community, so we're gonna keep it open." What I found more than anything, yeah, we had some things that could be changed to help us out from a bottom line standpoint. But what I found more than anything was, and this is sad, but I found a community and coworkers that they kind of lost their mojo. They had lost their confidence, and I found that they were kind of timid. They were wondering, "Hey, are we? How much longer are we going to be
What's going to
around?"
happen? Yeah.
Yeah, and I just found that was the most disheartening thing to me, that I felt like they had lost their hospital swagger, if you will. Like, "Hey, we're a hospital, we're going to make this work." They're really nervous.
Yeah. Well, I mean, walk us through that turnaround. I mean, you cut there was right to have trepidation, right? And you, hopefully, as a leader, came in and reinstilled confidence even in a tough time like that. But I mean, you came in, you cut costly agency staffing for in favor of local hires. You went after receivables, looked at the contracts, as you alluded to. You leaned into strengths with swing bed care, as you already talked about. I mean, what during that process moved the needle the most? And give me a sense, and our listeners a sense of that timeline where you felt like, from stepping in to where there was a shift, both financially, but maybe even culturally.
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, probably one of my favorites. We did cut some costs. There was not a lot of low-hanging fruit here. I mean, really, my predecessor, Dan McKinney, he did an excellent job of running a lean shop, really lean and mean. There was a couple things that we could lean into more in terms of service line growth and even new service lines. But I think the thing that made the biggest difference was us just getting out there and telling our story. Like, we had to start telling our story and selling ourselves. And so that was a cultural turnaround, but I think culture drives everything else. I vehemently believe that culture drives operations and success. And so we just started showing up and we started telling our story. I started having a regular leadership meeting and just telling people, like, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to put these certain structures in place. Yeah, these may seem like big hospital things, but we're a hospital here. We're going to do this. Meanwhile, in my seat, I'm getting invited to everything. I'm at chamber meetings, right. I'm at community events, and I'm just showing up and I'm telling them all the things that we are at this hospital and everything that we're going to become. And so I kind of relate. I told the leadership team here, hey, if we go back 30 years, we were this community's medical home. We were a medical home. They came to us for everything that made sense to come to us for and that they could. Somewhere along the line, we lost sight of that. We were okay with not being the medical home. We lost confidence to think that we could do that. And I just said, that's unacceptable. We need to go to the community and tell them that we're here to be their medical home. And so we just started not only did I get out in the community, we started inviting the community in here. We had health fairs. We hosted chamber membership meetings here. And then we also went out. We went out to, you could draw a 100-mile circle, and we've been to like every hospital. And we talked to them about what we do, why they should refer patients to us and what we can provide for them. Now we get patients here from Springfield, Missouri. We get patients from Barnes all the time. I mean, I see ambulances roll into our hospital from pretty far and wide, which is a cool thing to see. So I think that was the biggest part of the turnaround. And a lot of things I brought, it was just bringing structure here. Not to say that they didn't have that, but it was just a different structure. Like, okay, we're going to have these new committees. We're going to have Performance Excellence Council where you're going to tell us about all the great things you're doing in your department and what your growth plans are. Yeah, you're going to have an administrator that I'm going to come wear a tie because we're a hospital and we're going to do big hospital things and we're going to put ourselves on the map. And I think, honestly, Brendan, I think that was the biggest part of the turnaround. It wasn't some magic or secret recipe I had. And I was pretty explicit about that in the beginning. It's like, hey guys, I don't have like a magic playbook for you to grow out of this. I really don't. We just have to roll up our sleeves and start doing it together. And I'm surrounded by great people here that do that. Yeah,
you just got up and did it. I mean, I don't know if you were filling a void that wasn't there, right? Because you said there really wasn't a lot to change. It was a tight operation already, but getting out in the community, getting out and talking to other providers. I mean, so much of what I do personally, I mean, just is helping hospitals have direct contracts with their own employers in their own community, right? And how to structure those. And so when you talk about Hermann as a home, that's kind of what I think of. Let's take a step back from some of the big payers that are causing us strife, and really fundamentally and contractually even have relationships that drive and keep patients local. So, and I love everything you're doing. It sounds like it's. So take me back, I guess, to the second part of my question, just the timeline, like doing that, showing up at chamber events, economic development. county city functions. How long did it really take? And not that you would ever have a black and white, hey, we're good now, right? To say, hey, trust has been reestablished and the community views us differently now. But what do you really think in terms of a timeline after starting doing that it really took to turn it around?
Yeah. So the first year I was here, maybe not quite the entire year, but most of it, the work I did, I say, was I was plugging holes in the bottom of the boat. So there was a couple things that, like, okay, we need to change this. This is a bad contract for us, or we can maybe cut some costs here. So for the first year, it was getting out, telling that story, and plugging holes in the bottom of the boat. We were playing defense. I'll be honest. After about a year, I feel like we had planted seeds, but we hadn't seen them bear fruit yet. Then after about a year, we started to see that. We started to see ambulances from other communities start to show up. And we got to play more offense. We were in a better spot, still not great financially, but we were in a better spot where when I showed up here, we had our accounts payable at any given time was $1.5 to $1.6 million. That's bills that are outstanding, pay to keep the lights on kind of thing. We were not working net 30, meaning our bills that come in, you're paying them on a net 30. We were not doing that, which is why it grew to $1.6 million at any given time. And our revenue that was coming in was not covering that. So, I mean, even payroll at that time, it was like, okay, we're always going to fund payroll. So what other vendors, who do we put off and not pay? So we did that for a year. That was not fun. After about a year, we improved our bottom line. We had done a ton of work in revenue cycle to start capturing more revenue, which was a huge, that played a big part in the turnaround. And we got ourselves where we got breathing room. And so then after a year, we got to start adding some new service lines. We did start seeing new swing bed patients. We started to see going out to other hospitals and telling them about all of our services. We started to see that pay off.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned something that I'm always interested in. I'm hoping you'll go just a little bit deeper. When you say we dove into revenue cycle, and it was one of the hugest levers to pull, give us and the listeners some insight as to what you found. But did you work with consultants? Did you do everything in house? What was most enlightening, and then what really moved the needle when you talk about revenue cycle management?
Yeah. So one of the things you look at, you want to be lean at a critical access hospital. I think that was the place where I think we had started to cut into bone. So we didn't have the number of people that we needed. We've since added multiple FTEs there just because the amount of work, it could not be touched by the billing and coding team that we had. So we've added several coders. When we looked at revenue cycle, when I first got here, our book was at its height, it got up to 8.6 million. And our days in AR was at 86 days. About 2 million of that was aged over a year. So we weren't going to collect it. It was bad. It was pretty grim. So what we did, we worked with, to your question, we worked with our audit partner, and we made the decision to take a bite, and we wrote off a ton of bad debt out of AR. But it's like I told our board and our hospital, if we want to climb out of this hole, we have to get to the bottom first. And that's what we did. I mean, when we wrote off those accounts that were aged over a year, that took our accounts receivable way down, and it hit our bottom line on paper pretty significantly. So it hit our audit hard. Then we went out and we found a really, really good leader, revenue cycle, who is from the community, was working another hospital at the time, and she wanted to get back here. So we offered her a job as director of revenue cycle, and we allowed her to start to build her team. So we did add more FTEs. We did work with our auditing partner, who's really as a great consultant as well. And we wrote off a lot of bad debt. But what that allowed us to do was get our revenue cycle in much better shape. Now our days in AR, our goal, our director of revenue cycle, her goal is to be, it's like, it might even be sub 50. I think it's like 49 days in AR, which is like, that's really lofty.
Yeah.
But we have gotten our AR down to 58 days from 86. And 85% of our book is aged less than 120 days. I mean, those are really good fresh claims. Like,
Yeah.
so our AR is in a great spot right now. And that was what we just had to invest in that to make sure that we could keep up with it in real time.
Yeah. 2 years to 100 days, right? I mean, am I saying that right? I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, kudos to you guys. I mean, take me through a little bit of, last year you actually stepped away from the job. I alluded to it in my intro. I mean, then the community and your own staff pushed to bring you back. Mostly had to do with contracts. I'd prefer you to kind of walk us through this, but take us through that stretch and what it meant for you, what it meant for the community, and your resolve now that you're back.
Yeah. So that was really a difficult time for me. So the only reason I got to be here was through a management agreement, right? Through Mercy. I had been with Mercy since I actually say that the Sisters of Mercy helped raise me, because when I started there, I was I looked like a kid. I looked like I was 12 years old. And it was great. It was a great thing for me. And the Mercy system continues to be a great system to this day. There were things along the way, I had been there for 17 years. There were things along the way that I had a bit of a competing part of where I was in my life and where Mercy, I think, wanted me to be. And it was kind of a competition of values at that point. And it was really difficult because I owe so much to Mercy, and Mercy had done so much for me. But I prayed on it. I'm a man of very strong faith, and it was one of those things that I didn't even really want to do it. I had to do it. I was being called. And mind you, this is coming from a guy that I always have a plan. I have a plan A, I have a plan B and C. That's just the way I operate. Yeah. I had no plan. I had no plan. And telling our board here at Hermann that I was resigning from Mercy was one of the hardest things I've ever done, because I wasn't running from Hermann. And I knew they needed me, but I couldn't do it under the auspice of Mercy. And again, nothing against Mercy. It was just things change, and you have to move on. And I knew that moving on from Mercy meant moving on from Hermann. That was the only reason I was able to be in this chair. And so a lot of praying, and it's just I knew God was going to make everything okay. I don't know what that meant at that time. I mean, again, no plan, but it was just something I had to do. One of the hardest things I've ever done.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's incredible, a calling. I mean, you say yourself, you didn't know you'd be back. You didn't know what was in store for you. So, I mean, take me through that next step. I mean, what did the community and staff support mean to you to pull you back in, and not only pull you back in, but I mean, you still made a deliberate choice to come back, right? But on your own terms, and in a position that you could, I assume, affect change in a different way with different control. What are you able to do now that made those hard choices worth it, looking back?
Yeah. So first, touching on the community support, that was there's not many things that I've experienced like that. That was incredibly humbling. A guy like me, I think I was fairly well known around the area in terms of healthcare. I had other job offers that came in, but I wasn't excited about any of them. I just wasn't excited about them. And that's, if my heart's not in it, I can't do it. We had a board meeting right before my resignation was to take effect, and it was unreal. There was 60 plus people in the room, and I was not prepared for that. Members of the community, EMS, coworkers, the papers were there, and everyone was just basically imploring the board to do whatever they had to do to keep me here. And I never really thought that I had done that much for them. And so that really humbled me. And when the board over time worked with Mercy and said, hey, we want to go after Bill, and they ended that contract and went after me, I had to think really hard about that, because I told the board, like, hey, you have to be really sure. I'm one person, a very flawed person. And you could be walking away from a lot of support and a good network there. And so to me, it was scary. It was humbling knowing that the community had that much faith in me. I got to show up here and give 100% every single day, because they believed in me that much, which again, I think they give me too much credit. So yeah, it was deliberate. The decision to come back here when they asked me, but I knew, again, back to that calling and what I feel I'm supposed to do. Sometimes, for me, anyways, I have tried to base my career around not necessarily even what I want to do at the time, but what I feel like I have to do and I'm called to do. And I was certainly called to be here. Since I've been back, I have noticed even just a little bit different mystique here around the place, and an attitude that people are willing to go the extra mile and drive and to make things happen. And they also realize that, like, hey, this is all on us now. This is all on us, and we have to figure this out together. So that has allowed us to make some new decisions, open up some new service lines that maybe we wouldn't have. But it's also awakened us to the value of partnerships, and make sure that we keep close partners and that we're not in a competitive state with them, but we're working together with them.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, the testament that all speaks to what you've been able to do. And you said I didn't even realize I was able to do, but a message I take away there is just the power of autonomy in rural healthcare. You talk about being nimble and sure, being a little fearful of maybe the resources you might give up and that type of partnership, but the strength that swelled, taking the helm back and working with your fellow community members, right, on what's important for you, for this community. Your hospital's fiercely independent, a public district. You mentioned it just now. You lean on partnerships to survive. But you also make decisions that are best for your mission statement for that community. I mean, you've got an operating agreement with MU Healthcare, right? I mean, to help staff and run the emergency department and provide inpatient support, et cetera, plus a continuing affiliation with Mercy. So, I mean, how does that mix work?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a hospital like ours, I really don't think that it does work without partnerships. Before I got involved with Hermann Hospital, my predecessor, Dan McKinney, he had signed a contract with MU Healthcare to take over the emergency room medical coverage, provider coverage. And so they had been in our ER since 2022. One of the things that I noticed since once I had landed here back in 2023 was that we were kind of part and parcel in how we took care of the patients that were here. We had a contract with MU for emergency services. We had our own providers taking care of swing bed and acute admissions that were in our hospital. And we had a nighttime sign out service for hospital coverage. That was a Vel. And so we had these three different ones. And I thought, boy, wouldn't we have much better continuity of care and potentially a higher census if we put all this under one? And so we put bids out to multiple people like, hey, give us a plan of what comprehensive care would look like here. We had 4 really strong proposals. MU was they were the incumbent there, and they were also on Cerner, which is the only one that was on Cerner. So it just worked really well. And so they've become our medical provider in the ER and the hospital for all acute and observation admissions, which has been great. And they're really good at teaching too. Their providers here are really good about teaching our team that's here at the hospital, which is nice. The affiliation agreement with Mercy, Mercy's the closest hospital geographically here to the hospital. And the affiliation here is, I think this hospital has been affiliated with SSM at one time, Mizzou, I think Boone at one time. Mercy's been the affiliate for the last, I know, at least 10 years. And so where I see it doesn't have to be a relationship of exclusivity. I think with where we're positioned, we're open to not being in competition with anyone and working with all of our regional partners. And that's really how we approach every day. And so far it's worked really well.
Yeah. Well, it's unique, right? There's such a line in the sand sometimes with maintaining independence, giving up control, and finding where that line even is, right? Between leaning on partners and giving up that control. And it sounds like you've just found, I'm sure not a perfect solution, right? But a solution that works for your community, for your mission statement. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? But MU also sends medical students your way for rural training. What does that do for your pipeline and for the students?
Yeah, so we're working on that right now. I think we've signed the last agreements that need to be signed with MU for us to actually start taking medical students here. We haven't had our first one yet, but we're working towards that. The other thing that we have that we benefit from, and this is, MU is helping us with this, whether they know it or not. So they have a residency program at Capital Region Medical Center. Those residents, their residency is structured such that they work Monday through Friday and they have their weekends. And so we benefit from that. They obviously know of our hospital and they help moonlight for us on the weekends for swing bed patients. And so, medical students coming very soon, but we also, I feel like we're kind of helping with their residency program, and their residency program is helping with our hospital. Their providers that are in our ER, they've also been great about holding competency days for our nurses here and helping to educate them on new skills. And MU also sends a sim bus our way quite regularly, which is really cool because our team really likes it, and they get to go hands-on with things that maybe they wouldn't otherwise get to.
Yeah. Well, it's the value of that partnership showing up in different ways than what you had initially set out or thought. And that's really cool. The value of that partnership got tested for real last May, right? When a trolley packed with visitors crashed near your town and the ER suddenly had a mass casualty event on its hands. Take us to that day. Just take us to that day. I want to know the value of the partnership and what it brought, but whatever comes to mind, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, that day was, I remember that morning just vividly. And I got the call around 11 a.m. And it's the call that no administrator wants to get. Those calls are they're high level and vague because it's right at the beginning and you don't know much. We knew a trolley had been involved in an accident. It was going to be a mass casualty event. We need to basically activate incident command at our hospital. I was making my son a sandwich and pretty much put that on hold, called my wife and said, because she was up at the hospital in Washington, it's like, hey, you need to get home. I got to go. Took off and started calling several people. Some of those were MU providers that we have a relationship with and that work in our ER. And it was no question, just drop everything, leave the gym and start heading our way. When I arrived at the scene, which was, very soon after I left immediately, I saw 3 or 4 ambulances parked outside of our hospital that were actually, they were just waiting. They were waiting to take a critical patient to a higher level of care if they needed to. So the community, they got word and everyone showed up. I also walked into, I mean, at the time I got here, we probably had 50 additional people that had showed up here that were mostly Hermann coworkers that were not scheduled that day, but showed up. And even some community members that were nurses and showed up and like, how can I help? And then the MU providers showed up, and we opened up a forward triage out in our specialty clinic, moved into our specialty clinic. It was the weekend. There was nothing going on in there, and started to use those as evaluation exam rooms. And then the trolleys started coming. It actually worked out that we had so many people that needed transport. They actually took an in-service trolley and actually dropped some of the less injured, wounded victims off on a trolley in front of our hospital, where we forward triaged them. And then we had multiple ambulances come to with more critical patients. All told, it was, I believe we had 34 patients come through our hospital. And it just, we had our Hermann providers show up too. Our clinic providers, they all showed up, our chief of staff. And then I believe we had 3 MU providers here. Without an all hands on deck like that, I don't see how that day could have gone well. But it did, it went as well as a day like that can go. We had 34 patients to our ER. All of them were seen and treated within, I think it was 4.5 hours. Those that needed a higher level of care or surgery were transferred out in that time too. It just, again, partnerships.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just curious I'm sure nothing really prepares you that you can, point to for a situation like that. You're having to make decisions, critical decisions on the fly quickly, as to how to really deal with the volume, right? I mean, a trolley full of tourists is a very wine country kind of emergency. I mean, I kind of wonder if being a destination town just in general changes what a 24-bed, ER has to be ready for, aside from a terrible incident like this.
Absolutely. And I had this conversation with our MU providers often. They say it's a pretty tough gig to fill because, critical access hospital, your volumes tend to be lower. I mean, they are lower, especially through the ER. You may have a day where you see 9 patients, and maybe everything's not all that critical. But then you may have the day where you have a lot more patients, or maybe even not a lot more, but you have much more critical patients. In just the last few years, we've had double gunshot wounds here at our hospital. We've had a suicide attempt by fire. We get very critical patients here. We have cardiac arrest show up all the time. I mean, we have had some extremely significant things come through our ER. And so, and the reason for that being is that we're it. And for, a 40-mile radius, we're it. And so in those real emergent situations where you need stabilization, if you even want to make it to a higher level of care, you've got to be on your game and you got to be ready.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've been in the public supporting, I kind of shifting gears here a little bit, but staying in the vein of partnerships, right? The proposed legislation that would allow, MU Healthcare to step in and run hospitals across central Missouri. Actually, in an earlier episode, I had a chat with Rick Ranso about this, and we dug into that bill from the systems side. But I would really, really love your perspective as a rural leader, why you back it, maybe validating some of the concerns, invalidating some of the concerns, but also, validating the reasons why, right? I mean, if hospitals closing, there's a ton of red tape, and for a system to step in without that risk makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I'll preface this by saying I obviously do not know the ins and outs of that enabling legislation as well as Rick Ransom does. Here's my understanding of it, and why I support it. You know what? I'll start with the critic side, because I have MU has asked me to sit through multiple committee hearings about this. What I have heard critics say of this bill is that they're concerned that it will allow an organization such as MU to go into communities and basically outcompete the little guys like me. The enabling legislation, that would allow them to grow in their direct service area, which, yeah, there is real hard stops to them being able to do that. A lot of the rural healthcare providers that are surrounding MU that would be outcompeted by them, they could do that today. Like Hermann, for example, we're not in the area that would currently today, without enabling legislation, it would not prohibit MU from coming into this community. They could come and put a flag here and outcompete us if they wanted to today. On the flip side of that coin, MU, they could come in, they could, if the board so chose to be acquired by MU or integrate, and MU was interested in integrating, they could do that today without enabling legislation. So I think part of the critics' fears are that it's going to allow MU to put guys like me, hospitals like Hermann, out of business, where if that was the fear, that would be happening today, I think. Now, there could be some competition that could grow inside of their direct service area, which is a much smaller region. Why I am supportive of it is if there are those hospitals or organizations or freestanding health clinics that are struggling inside of their direct service area and do need some help, it gives them a lifeline. It gives them an option. You know, since 2005, 200 rural hospitals have closed. And that especially with the horizon that we see right now, unfortunately, I don't see that trend going the other way. And so what I really care about at the end of the day, yeah, I am a competitive person. I do like my independence, as do every single critical access hospital leader that is independent today. We all love our independence. What I love more is being there for the community. And I want people to have options, is where I come at from this.
Yeah. Well, so you can keep competing, right? I mean, I think, you know, what you said about rural health and rural hospitals in general. I mean, Missouri, we've talked about it before, but, you know, is at the top of the list in terms of fragility, right, of some of the rural health systems. And so, you know, you've said something that's stuck with me. I mean, all of us are just a heartbeat away from closure. And you alluded to it earlier when you said it's a thin veil, right? I mean, unpack that for people who've never run a hospital on this kind of margin. You know, just a little bit. You give us a little more color.
Yeah. So I'll apologize in advance. I could probably be really long-winded on this. Critical access hospitals, we do benefit from something called cost-based reimbursement. What cost-based reimbursement is on its face is a dollar for dollar match, basically saying, Medicare saying, hey, for every dollar you spend taking care of one of our patients, we're going to give you $1. But the devil's in the details. Here's the thing. Cost-based reimbursement really isn't cost-based reimbursement. There's this little thing called Medicare sequestration. So what it actually ends up being is, for every dollar you spend taking care of our patients, we're going to give you 98 cents. 98 cents on the dollar. So, you know, I akin this to my daughter at home who, you know, she runs a lemonade stand. If she's selling every glass of lemonade at 98 cents on the dollar, she's not going to keep a lemonade stand for very long. So even cost-based reimbursement, why it's good is that actually it does give us a little bit more of a margin than a lot of our private payers, believe it or not. So I won't mention any private payers directly, but that's one of the aspects of my job that I do not enjoy, and that's negotiating with private payers because I have no lever, and they know that. If I say, "Hey, we're losing money on your contracts, can you please pay us more?" I think I'm going to have to cancel the contract. They act like I'm canceling cable. It's like, well, you know what, Mr. Hellebusch, we see that we could actually end the agreement in 3 weeks' time, and they know I'm not going to do that. They know as a hospital administrator in a small rural community where I grew up, I'm not going to turn people away from a common cold.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. And they know that. And so what that leads to is we actually had to shutter orthopedic services here. Great need in the community, but our contracts are so bad with certain payers that it's not a matter of being market competitive or covering our costs. It's a matter of not bleeding. Like, we're actually losing money doing surgery for patients that's needed. To me, that's bananas.
Yeah.
Now, what we do in my seat is I don't let well enough alone. We are in constant conversations. We actually had a really good one last week with one of our payers, and I am hopeful that we're going to be able to get our contracts better to be able to turn services like orthopedic surgeries back on. But my point is, our contracts are so close, and we operate on a margin that, hey, we're going to pay you not even everything it takes for you to take care of our patients. It's very hard to even end at a zero balance budget at the end of the year. And that's with a tax revenue. Here at Hermann Hospital, we benefit from about a $1.6 million tax revenue. The last 2 years, we finished about even on the year, which was great. That was coming after several years of losing $1.6 million from operations. And after our tax revenue the last couple of years, which is a bolus of money to us that's beyond operational, we just landed, right around even. That leaves nothing left to reinvest back into your facility to fix a roof, put in new air handlers, repair the broken elevator. You have no emergency fund, basically.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's stay in that vein on finances. I mean, it's tough, right? I mean, it's there's no way around it. You've talked about payer relations, which I would love your perspective on how to maintain positive payer relations, even given the fact that you have no leverage. But I mean, taking it another step in terms of the finances, you're, if I'm not mistaken, staring at a jump in the interest rate on your 2016 bonds that could cost around $250,000 a year. Roughly what the hospital expects from Medicaid for the year. So how are you working that challenge? So it's a two-part, right? How are you working that challenge? And then, again, back to the payer relations, what makes a meaningful impact? You talk about improving contracts to bring service lines back, but what does that actually look like in practice?
Yeah. Great questions. So on the payer contracts, a big part of that is telling your story again. And so the conversation that I'm in the middle of right now in orthopedics, we have had this conversation going for it's about 8 months. Yeah. I continue to tell our story and show them plainly in black and white why these contracts don't work for us and why it is keeping patients in this community from getting a service in the community that they desperately need. And you do that long enough, I do think that those messages start to land. And I don't come out swinging. I come at those conversations from the angle of, please help me. Help me take care of, because they all say, hey, you all are very important to your community. We need to keep you going. And I hold them to their word. I say, okay, I need you to help me. And here's the economics we're looking at specific to you and these service lines. I need your help. And I think you do that long enough, you do get somewhere. With respect to continuing leverage with payers, I think we got to start being really creative and strategic. And I don't know how much you know about this, but I think we've done that in Missouri with adopting a clinically integrated network called the Show Me High Value Network. That was, a band at 17 of us, I believe, at the beginning. we banded together to create a network that was basically, it's creating a managed care contract vehicle where when we go to payers under managed care contracts, it's, hey, you're not just dealing with Hermann Hospital anymore. You're dealing with the Show Me High Value network that now today represents 21 hospitals and just over $2 billion in gross revenue. So that's different. That gets attention. And I think we have to continue to do really creative things like that. In terms of specific to Hermann and our bonds, yeah, it's the interest rate is resetting next month in August, and it's going to cost us, between $20,000 and $30,000 more a month. That's untenable for a hospital like ours. Since I got here, when I went through all the contracts and all of our books, I have been pretty forward about my intent and my desire to restructure or refinance our bonds. The reasons I wanted to do that was, one, our bond covenants that were originally written in 2016, they do not work for us anymore. There are bonds that were written that really, even people in a much stronger financial position, some of those you're only going to meet in year one.
Right.
One is our tangible balance sheet equity. Just because we have the nature of depreciation burning off every year, that's going to put us outside the bounds of meeting a tangible balance sheet equity every year. We never meet that bond covenant. Why that's bad for us is, you have an audit every year. If you're not meeting your bond covenants, that calls into question, hey, what's your viability and what's your position with the bank, the bondholders, right? And so even on a year where we have a good year, you have your auditors say like, okay, well, do we issue a going concern or not? And it all comes down to those bond covenants. And that's a big deal for us. Those, an audit, it follows you. So I wanted to restructure them for that purpose. I also really wanted to get the money local. Hermann Hospital, we have about $8.3 million left in bonds. It's not held in our state. So there's money to be made on those bonds. Since I came here, and again, it's just the way I work. I'm a big community guy. I'd like that money to be held locally. The third reason, which is a newer one that we just unfortunately recently learned about, was the reset in our interest rate that is fast approaching. So that's a pretty darn good third reason to restructure these things. And so we've reached out to the law firm that actually helped structure the original one back in 2016, and they gave us good advice, and we started going to local banks, and we're engaged with a local bank right now, and we've had other local banks reach out to us that there is an appetite now because of our performance over the last couple of years. There is an appetite out there to take on our bonds and put them local and restructure our bond covenants, which would be, it would save us, over $250,000 a year, but it also, and this to me is just as big a deal, if not bigger. It would give us covenants that we would agree to. I already told any banks that we work with, like, hey, if you're looking at, just reinstituting our covenants that we have now that they just don't really make sense for us, then I'm not interested in doing this. Right. And they hear me loud and clear.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome that you could partner with a local bank for that. I assume a locally owned bank. All these things culminate into your viability, right? Doing these things, the Show Me High Value network, which I'd love to in fact, when do you feel, so that's early in its stages, right? In terms of the formation, but when do you feel that banding together, obviously the payer relations piece and the contracts piece is going to be the one of the biggest levers financially for those 21 hospitals, including yourself, but when do you think you'll see a meaningful impact in that change? Will it be this year, next year, a couple years? Walk me through that, because I know it's a long process to get it, set up, right?
It is. Our goal is that we had the vehicle built by the end of this year. Actually, originally, we really wanted to have by the end of this summer. End of summer, we want to have a lot of it built. Definitely by the end of this year. Nothing like I think we'll see in the long run, but I think we will start to see some return on investment in 2027. So that's great. I don't think it's going to be a complete return on investment in year one or potentially even year two. but I think we're going to start seeing the return in 2027.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Well, let's just stay on what's happening in Missouri, right? What's happening federally? I mean, let's talk about some healthcare efforts at the state level. You've put the hospital's name in to be a hub anchor. I know that we just got through that application process and it being due last month, right? So under Missouri's Rural Health Transformation Program, talk to us about the program and your role in the effort. What would landing that mean for Hermann and the surrounding counties, and how did you come around to, hey, you know what, we are going to take on this hub anchor? I think of it as a responsibility, right? But I mean,
100%.
obviously, would love to hear where you feel there's benefit.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, in a hospital like Hermann, we all wear many hats, and we don't have the resources or layers that other places do. So in that respect, applying to be Hub 21's anchor, which we're coining Go 21 because it's Gasconade and Osage County. It's daunting because it's going to be a lot of work. We know that, but you said it. It's responsibility. I think it's incumbent upon us as the only hospital that resides inside a Hub 21. I really don't even think we have a choice. We need to be the anchor. And I actually had several community partners that I work with, EMS districts and local health departments. I had multiple people reach out to me and say, "Hey, Bill, you're doing this, right?" It's like, yeah, I'm doing it. I think it's beneficial to have the hospital as the hub. Right now, we work and touch several different of the entities that are going to be a part of Go 21 already, and the community residents. I mean, all come up here already for so much healthcare in the community. For us, what it could mean, we feel that it's important for us to not have these things happen to us, but
Right.
be a part of the decisions that are going to be made and how some of the RHT dollars are going to flow. We need to be at the table, not being talked about by those that are at the table.
Right. Well, and obviously, my understanding is that there will be many hands and many minds in the room deciding, kind of that. But to your point, being at the center, I imagine has a ton of value. You'll probably have to hire someone for that role, right, to coordinate that. So there's a challenge there, and one that we haven't really talked about. I mean, the workforce coming up behind you and me is different. I mean, the different expectations and different ways of working. How do you build a team for a rural hospital out of that new generation? I mean, even when you have things in partnership like the University of Missouri and their programs that help put students in your midst. Just walk me through that a little bit.
Yeah, that's another great question. And I feel I'm still trying to learn the new generation. To be honest, I'm actually still trying to learn my generation. I'm cut from a little bit different cloth. I think work-life balance became a really important discussion along with my generation. I'm a millennial, and I'm not saying the way I'm structured or wired is the right way, because it's if I do have some regrets, there's definitely some tucked in there that there's time that I've spent in my professional career that I won't get back with my family, and just being a workhorse. The new generations that are coming up, yes, they are big on work-life balance, which I think is good, but it's just completely different. I mean, they're really creative in how they look at work, and it's almost like even the full-time ones that, they may need benefits or expect benefits, they almost do they have a desire rather to be more in type of the gig realm. And that's really, really difficult. It's hard to structure staffing around those that they want to be able to structure work around their family life. Now, I don't see that as a barrier for the future. I see it as a challenge for us to figure out. That's our job. That is our job to figure that out and to be creative and to meet the new workforce's desires and how they wish to work. So we've done some things here. I mean, we've even structured, we do we call them, they're not internal agency contracts. We don't call them agency, but It's an internal temporary shift agreement is what it is. And so we do take people that are here and we say, okay, hey, if you want to be able to pick up multiple shifts, we're going to move your shift a little bit and you pick up certain of these holes. You'll make a little more while you do it, not what an agency coworker would do, but it's just a matter of being flexible.
Yeah, I mean, things are changing, right? I mean, you're turning out of this. Love how, I mean, the part I take away is just you're again taking challenges and turning them opportunities, because these aren't challenges that are only unique to Hermann, right? Everyone's having those, and so if you can have getting back to your competitive edge, right? Be doing things more efficient, or putting more thought into ways to take that opportunity and run with it in a unique way. You're going to be out ahead. I mean, this has, of course, just been a fantastic discussion. I mean, you're an awesome community leader, hospital administrator. You're obviously taking challenges and change and making things happen for your community because you've been in that community. So, I mean, as we look to the future, one question I always love to leave our guests with is just when you think about what's one mindset shift you believe rural healthcare leadership needs right now, and what's something actionable those leaders can take this month, take away from this episode, and run with.
Yeah. So I have two things, but I think they kind of go hand in hand. First is that, for a long time, we kind of look to our representatives and we go, we'll go on the rural healthcare advocacy trip to DC. I love those. They're great. And MHA does a great job of putting us in the right place at the right time and talking with our representatives. And I've fallen into this trap myself, kind of get into a woe is me and say, well, it's just so hard and we just need reform and we need this and we need that. We need our representatives to go to bat for us with this. All that's true. It is. But it's not the saving grace at the end of the day. It's really not. It can't be. I love all of our representatives. Thank you all for everything you're doing. But you are not the answer to this problem. You can't be. It has to be us. We have to disrupt. We have to innovate. We have to be creative and solve this problem as the healthcare leaders. I vehemently believe that. Along with that, one of the ways that I think that we can innovate and disrupt, and this is coming from a guy, I've said it in this podcast, I'm fiercely competitive. I am fiercely competitive, except when it comes to healthcare. And I've had to learn that over the way. I've seen competition in healthcare, and it really shows a face of healthcare that I don't much care for. I have found, and this is the volume on this has been turned up for me since I've landed here in Hermann. I think in order for us to be successful, we have got to stop competing with one another. And so I think for rural healthcare leaders, if you're not doing it already, something you can do today, you have to go out and forge partnerships. You have to join a clinically integrated network. You have to call the other rural hospitals that are in your region and start to compare ideas. Yes, you have to call the big systems in your area and tell them the things that you can offer to their system, and also ask for the services and maybe specialties that they have that you don't offer that your community could benefit from. We have to partner together.
Oh, partnerships. I mean, I love it. Well, Bill, this has been fantastic. I seriously appreciate your time, and you've shown, just what being an awesome leader can do for your community, and how your community responds to that awesome leadership, which has just been unique in this discussion. So I can't wait for the opportunity to come out and meet you. Maybe in conjunction with a little trip, I get my family up there, come out and see things for myself. So I don't know that that'll be a hard ask, but really appreciate, you taking the time and sharing with our listeners.
Oh, Brennan, the pleasure was mine. Really, this was great. And we'll host you in Hermann at any time. Wine, sausages, and beer. On me.
Done. I'll check my calendar this weekend.
All right. Sounds good, Brennan. Thank you.
See you, sir.